Hey everyone, I'm Runa and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a Viking style hood, also known as the Skjoldehamn hood. This is based off of an archaeological find from Norway dated to about the 11th century CE, and is very popular with reenactors and LARPers alike just because it can be very decorative or it can be very functional, and it's a very simple construction. So it's all rectangles and squares. Garments from about this period are very typically rectangular construction just because fabric was very expensive. So it makes sense that they would not want to waste any of it. So it's a very simple project, great beginner accessory you can add to your LARP kit. It's really popular in Amtgard for what we call master hoods. When you reach the rank of master garber, master smith, whatever you're a master of, you receive a master hood. I'm actually wearing mine right now, made for me by my lovely friend Laryl. And this is exactly the style of hood I'm talking about. I'll insert some pictures up here so you can see other different styles of this hood. The big gore at the front is a great surface area for decoration, and the flat pieces make it really easy to construct and also add a lot of decorative elements. So today I'm going to show you how to make a fairly simple hood, but you can embellish this as much as you like. With all that being said, let's get into it. To make the hood in this tutorial, if you're doing an unlined hood, you will need at least 1 yard of non-stretch fabric that's at least 45 inches wide. For a lined hood, you'll need 2 yards of non-stretch fabric at least 45 inches wide. Some all-purpose thread, trim or bias tape if you want to finish it off, either sewing scissors or a rotary cutter. So either a sewing machine or a hand sewing needle, whichever you prefer. So a quick note about the sizing of these hoods. For all the Viking style hoods that I make, I tend to use a standard size just because it keeps it simple and I don't always have the person there to take measurements. This isn't a very fitted garment, so you can usually get away with it. But if you are very broad in the shoulders, you may want to make it up a little bit bigger. But I've found that the measurements I use fit both myself at 5'4", kind of on the petite side, and my partner who is 6'3" and has somewhat broader shoulders just fine. So, your mileage may vary. I definitely recommend making your first one in a cheaper fabric so that you can kind of test out the fit and see if you need to maybe scale it up a little bit. But the pieces you're going to cut out are very simple. We're going to have either 2 rectangular body pieces or 1 long rectangle cut on the fold and 2 square gores for the front and back. Now that's assuming a single layer hood. If you want to do a lined hood, you're basically just going to double all the pieces and make 2 identical hoods that then fit inside each other. So the dimensions that I use are 15 inches by 30 inches for the longer rectangular pieces. If you decide to cut it on the fold, that's just going to be 1 long piece that is 15 inches by 60 inches. And then the 2 gores, which are 15 inches square. So 15 inches on each side. Now, my general rule of thumb is to make the gore roughly half the size of the body pieces. But you can kind of play around with dimensions. There are some hoods that use smaller gores, that you make shorter body pieces and kind of have it sit higher up on the shoulders instead of going further down the body. It's really up to you. I find this bigger size is better for master hoods and things like that because you have more space to decorate. It also gives you a little more coverage if you actually are looking to use it for rainwear or for keeping warm, either way. And of course, the bigger size means it's more likely to fit more people and you don't have to worry about it being too small. Now, you can make this out of almost any fabric. I do recommend a non-stretch fabric because stretchy material is just not really meant for this kind of thing and it's going to make it more difficult on you. So any kind of non-stretch fabric, I typically like a linen, cotton, wool if you want it to be warmer, something like that. If your fabric is at least 45 inches wide, then you only need 1 yard to make a single layer hood. If you have 60-inch wide fabric, you definitely can do it with a yard. Now, a lot of common fabrics like cotton come in 44-inch widths. Can you still make the hood with a yard? Yes, just make your pieces a little bit smaller. If you trim 1/2 inch off of every single measurement, it will make the hood a little bit smaller, but it's really not a noticeable difference, and you'll be able to get it out of a yard of 44-inch width fabric. Of course, if you're doing a lining in the same fabric, you'll double that. And you can also get creative. You can make the gores different colors. You can, use even different colors for the 2 side pieces or patchwork something together. So it's a really great project to use up scrap pieces that are maybe decently sized, but not, big enough for a whole tunic or anything, and you're not really sure what to do with them. The first step is to sew the tops of your side pieces together. If you cut this as one long piece, you can just skip this step, but if you have 2 pieces like I do, then you're going to sew them together. I'm just clipping them first with these little sewing clips. I tend to prefer these over pins just because I think they're easier to handle, but you can pin it, you can just go right in, whatever feels good to you. And then I'm just sewing it together with a simple straight stitch. If you're doing an unlined hood, you definitely want to finish your seams. If you're doing a lined hood, you can usually get away with not finishing the seams because they'll be encased inside the lining. If you have a fabric that's really prone to fraying, you may want to finish them off still. So I'm just going through and finishing with a simple overlock stitch that my machine does. You could use a zigzag, French seam, flat fell, whatever you want here. So next up, we're going to line up one of the gores with the bottom of our side pieces. So I'm lining up the edge of one of the gores with the long edge of one of the side pieces, and then starting from the bottom, just clipping it in place, and then I'm going to sew it down with a straight stitch again. Once again, I'm finishing off the seam with an overlock stitch. I do find that doing it as I go along makes it a little bit easier, but you can finish the seams all in one go at the end. Going forward, I'm not going to show you every time that I finish a seam just because that will get really boring, but know that I am doing them every time. Now we're going to attach the other side of the hood body to the second side of the gore. So you can see I'm opening up the seam here and then flipping that long body piece around and then lining it up with the side of the gore that is next to the side that we sewed before. So as I sew down the side of this gore, I'm stopping just a little bit past where the other seam is, maybe about 1/2 inch or so. I'm not going all the way down, instead just finishing that seam off here, and then that's going to leave an opening at the top, which will be the hole for your face. Now for the other side, we're just going to repeat the steps for the first part, but instead of stopping after sewing on that gore, we're going to continue all the way down that side to close up the entire seam, and that will make the back of the hood. Now, if you're sewing an unlined hood, we're already almost done. So I'm going to do a simple fold over hem for this one. So I'm folding it over about 1/4 of an inch on the edge and then folding it over another 1/4 of an inch and then just stitching that down with a straight stitch. You could use a decorative stitch here. This would be a great place to add a little bit of a pop of decoration to an otherwise very plain hood, or you could finish it off with bias tape or some other type of trim to make it a little nicer looking. I typically just fold over the edge as I go, but if you're a bit newer to sewing, you might want to iron it in place or pin it or clip it down before sewing just to make it a little bit easier. Comes to the hood opening, I'm doing basically the same thing, just folding it over twice and hemming that edge down. I like to start at the top or another flat section of the hood, just so that it's a little easier to do. The trickiest part is going to be when you get down to the bottom where that gore meets the hood opening, and you just have to take it slow, try to fold it in and use as narrow of a hem as you can, or once again, you can use bias tape on this opening to clean it up that way. Now, if you're making a lined hood, we're basically going to make 2 hoods that are identical in shape, even if they're not identical in color, and then place one of the hoods inside the other so that right sides are together. So in this case, I'm taking my outer layer, which is the one with the blue, turning it right side out, and then placing it inside the lining layer, which is the all pink layer that is inside out currently. Then we're going to flip these 2 layers together at the face opening. So I'm just lining up these seams at the top to make sure that they're all nice and lined up, and then using the clips once again to go around the opening and secure that in place. Then I'm going to just stitch around that with a straight stitch. Once the 2 layers are stitched together at the face opening, it's time to flip them so that the inside seams are on the inside and you only see the right sides facing outward. So I'm pulling the one layer outside of the other, and that's going to give us 2 hoods that are essentially attached to each other at the face and facing each other. Now you can see that both layers are inside out. So I'm going to flip them so that the outer layer goes on top of the lining layer, and then it will be facing right side out, and all the seams will be hidden in the middle. You don't have to do it this way. You could just place both layers inside each other, wrong sides facing, so that all the seams are hidden, and then finish off the edges with bias tape or a simple rolled hem, however you want to do it. I like to use this method just because it gives you a nice, clean, crisp edge there at the face opening, and you know that it's going to line up properly there. And then I'm just going through and kind of pressing that edge with my fingers, rolling it to make sure that the edge is nice and flat and lays nicely. You can go through and press this with an iron to get it nice and flat, and then you can top stitch it down or use a decorative stitch along that opening, or again use a piece of trim, whatever you think would look nice. For the bottom edge of the lined hood, you could just do a regular fold over hem, or again, finish it off with bias tape. I like to fold both seam allowances inward and then sandwich them together so that it makes a nice clean edge without a lot of bulk. So basically I'm taking one side, folding it down about 1/4 of an inch, and then taking the other side and folding it down about the same. You want the lining layer to be folded down just a little bit more so that it doesn't peek out over top of the outer layer. And then you'll just clip it in place and then top stitch it down either with a straight stitch or a decorative stitch. All right, and that is it. We have finished our hood. Thank you so much for joining me for this project. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps the channel. And I hope to see you in my next video. Have a great day.